Hi, I'm Ash and welcome to my home in London. If you're new here, then hi, my name is Ash, and around 4 years ago, my partner Chad and I bought this Victorian terraced house in East London. And over those 4 years, we've spent a lot of time and money renovating it. And I thought it'd be a really fun chance to show you guys around, give you a current house tour of what it's looking like and what the plans are going forward. Normally when you see a house tour, I'd say 9 times out of 10 it's pretty much finished. That's not the case for this house. There are still a lot of things to do and I don't think it will ever end. We're 4 years into this now and it's still the little things that we need to get done. So we're going to start the house tour in the dining room and work our way through, and hopefully you guys enjoy. I will just take the time to say, if you haven't already, then please do hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out and it means I can make more videos like this for you guys in the future. So if you haven't already, click that button, give this video a like, and if you could leave a comment, leave something nice. Let's get started with the house tour. So when we came to the viewing of this house, we expected to walk in to find this really rich and characterful house, but what we walked into was a white box, and that's really not exaggerating. I'll try and find the videos for when we bought this house and what it originally looked like, but for a house that's over 100 years old, this house was built in 1901, and there was just no evidence that it's that old. There was no character, it was just a bog standard big white room that was open planned, and it just felt really, really soulless, and it really just did not feel like a Victorian house at all. So we knew that when we bought it, we wanted to add in as much character as possible, and we did that in a few ways. The first of them being adding in this huge fireplace. Granted, this is not what a Victorian fireplace would have looked like in a terraced house. This is more of like a farmhouse Georgian style fireplace, but it's something that I felt looked right in this house, and we've actually created one in the dining room and a symmetrical one completely matching in the lounge. And I just feel like this adds a sense of like focal point to the room. It really adds a bit of character and it just makes this room feel a lot more traditional and a lot more in keeping with the time period. This was one of the first projects we did with this room, and it's still an outstanding project because down below there is nothing in it. We don't actually have the chimney breasts in this house. Whoever lived in here before, or the previous owners before that, completely removed all of the chimney stacks and everything throughout the entire house. The only thing we're left with are the chimney flues, I believe they're called, on the top of the roof. But other than that, there's no working chimney system. So to reinstall that would have been a really hefty cost. And at that time, we just couldn't justify doing it. It is one of those things that I wish we had done, but because we never did that, and it's probably not going to be one of the things we are going to do, we're actually going to add in some bioethanol fireplaces. If you've never heard of a bioethanol fireplace, it's basically a real flame that's just created with liquid, but we're going to get a nice sized traditional style log burner, tile this whole area, and make it look really pretty, and it should be a really lovely feature for this room. Another thing that we did with this room is that where you're stood now used to be a wall made out of a really odd type of wood. It was basically panelled and really thin. It wasn't a structural wall, but it was the wall to the staircase, and we knew that to add some character back in, we wanted to create a traditional style Victorian staircase. We added in spindles, a handrail, we redid all of the steps, and it's still one of my favourite features in this house. I think it just adds in a real Victorian charm to it, and it's one of those things that you wouldn't expect to add back into a house, but I couldn't picture this room without it. So I genuinely think that this room is one of my favourite rooms in the house. It was one of the first rooms that we renovated, and I still love it to this day. I think it's a really lovely room. I'd say the two major things that we did to transform this room from how it was when we bought the house were to A, sort of build out this wall. So again, we added in this fireplace, symmetrical to the one we have in the dining room. And then we decided to task our carpenter to build these two traditional style bookcases either side of the fireplace. We really love that style to hold antique books that we've obviously collected as well. But it's just really in keeping with the time period of the property, and I think it just adds to the traditional charm, and I really do love it. I'm really happy that we did that. I'd say the other thing that we did to sort of create the division of this room and make it feel more so like its own space was to add in this sort of semi-partition wall. I'm really not the biggest fan of open plan spaces, and I just think that adding in a wall like this just creates a space in itself, and it's sort of a subconscious realization of which room belongs to which. And because of it, I think this room just feels really cocooning, really cozy. And I think it has a lot to do with this sort of partition wall. The other thing that we did in this room, obviously, is colour drench it. The same colour isn't on the skirting and the walls and the ceiling. We actually chose two different colours. One is a dark green, brown, muddy colour. We've taken that from the wall up into the ceiling. And then on the woodwork, skirting, trim work, it's all a different colour. So it's quite light. They both really complement each other. And I just really love this room. It's actually going to be changing slightly in the next few weeks. So we've got an exciting project coming up. We're going to be changing most of the things in here. So the sofa, the armchair, the curtains are going, all of the artwork, apart from these two, will be staying. Lots of soft furnishings to find, footstool we need. This room's never really been finished. Again, it was one of the first rooms that we did when we were renovating this house. We sort of moved from one room to the other quite quickly without fully finishing one. I'd say this room is definitely going to be one to look out for. But yeah, I'm really excited to unveil to you guys what this room's going to look like and the vision for it. I really quickly just want to touch on these two. We've named them Harold and Maud. They look very fitting for those names. I actually believe they're a farming family from Worcestershire, which is quite close to where I'm from in the Cotswolds. But we found these at an antique market for a really good price. We love collecting antique oil paintings. They're very hard to find. We just really love them and we think they add to the sort of charm of the house. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about oil paintings, especially portraits, and especially when they're not in your family and they're not your family members, but I think they're really lovely. And if we wouldn't have bought them, I dread to think of what would have happened with them. Most of the artwork that we found has either been treated quite badly, like a lot of these frames are broken, or they're just sort of not valued by the people that own them. So we like to think they're coming to a good home where we'll cherish them and keep them for a very long time. So I hope that answers some of your questions. No, they are not our ancestors, but they are now very much a part of our family. But definitely let me know your thoughts on this room before it changes, because I might try and steal some of your ideas. Now we're done with the sitting room, let's move in to another one of my favourite rooms, the kitchen. And if you haven't seen our kitchen before, it's very bold, but I think most of you will really like it. So welcome to our kitchen. I'm sure most of you would have seen this room somewhere before. It's gone viral quite a few times on my social channels because it is very bold and a very different kind of kitchen. Originally when we had this kitchen installed, it was a cottage cream colour from Wren Kitchens, but we decided that it just wasn't to our taste and it just looked a bit bland and a bit soulless. So we actually decided to paint this a really dark plum red colour, and it really just brought out the soul of this room, and it really makes it feel traditional, very Victorian, and just really, really lovely. I'd say we did this before the whole trend of red kitchens, and I'm just so happy that we did it because it is very timeless to me. I think we did this around 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now, and it still looks really lovely and we do not regret it at all. So I definitely think if you're looking to change a bit of a boring kitchen in your house and you don't really know how to do it, definitely consider paint colours. We went for a double Belfast sink. We went for wooden countertops. Both Chad and I really love a butcher's block countertop. I think marble can be quite overdone. I do love marble, however, I also do love wood. So I'm really happy we chose this walnut butcher's block countertop. The one thing that I love about wood is that it dents and it gets a bit of wear and tear, and you can really see that it's being used, and I just really love that about interiors. I like to see that a house is lived in, and if everything's too perfect, then I think it just looks a bit soulless. The flooring, I don't know if I've mentioned, we have a herringbone oak parquet all the way through the downstairs of the house, just not in the sitting room. We wanted a really traditional style floor. We were considering actually getting terracotta flooring in the kitchen and then having oak parquet throughout the rest of the downstairs, but we decided against it because the continuity and the flow just felt a lot better. When we bought this house, this room was very dingy, very dark, and it actually had a conservatory attached to the outside where this door would have been. We decided to get rid of it, A, because we don't like conservatories, and B, because it was a really, really badly made conservatory. It had corrugated sheets of plastic for the roof, and it was just not a well-made conservatory. So we actually ripped that out, and we now have a bigger garden, which I'll take you into in a second. But as you can see, I've completely skipped it, but this room is currently under construction and renovation. There actually used to be loads of overhead cabinetry here. It was part of our original kitchen design from Wren Kitchens, and we just never really loved it. When we went to go design it, we were very rushed on time, so we decided to try and build this faux sort of fireplace out of wood cabinets. It just looked really cheap and really naff, and we just decided completely get rid of it, start over. And what we're actually going to do in the next few weeks is we're going to tile this whole backsplash with Devol cream subway tiles. We're then going to add a really lovely unlacquered brass pole going all the way across, hang lots of copper brass pans, add in lots of artwork, some antiques, some fabrics across the windows, and lots of nice tea towels, and this room is just going to really come to life. We want to try and create that Devol kitchen on a budget. So again, that's going to be happening within the next few weeks. We've actually ordered our tiles, but because they're being handmade, there is a bit of a lead time on them. So within the next 4 weeks, I think the tiles should be delivered, and then our kitchen project should be finished. If you have any questions about this room, do fire away, and I will try and get back to you in the comments. Before we head on outside, let's go upstairs into the main bedroom. It's one of the most recent room transformations in the entire house, and it's a room that I think you'll really like. I don't know if I've said it before, but I love making and sharing these videos. I get so many messages saying that these videos help you to unwind, whether you're putting me on in the background and just pottering about, or whether you're watching just to switch off after a long day. But honestly, it means a lot. Some of you have said that you visited restaurants that we've recommended, and others have said that you've gone to the Cotswolds after seeing it in a vlog. And quite a few of you have shared your personal stories with me, things that are really difficult and the things that you're going through. But it's such a lovely mix, and I really love that this space has become that for so many of you. And it has had me thinking lately about how important it is to talk about how we're doing, especially when it comes to mental health. When I was growing up, it wasn't really something we spoke about in my house. I don't know if it's because it's a British thing and we were just told to crack on and keep your chin up. But there was definitely this sense that if you needed help, you just weren't coping, and that is just not the case. And actually, I think it takes far more strength to say, I could use a bit of support. So in honour of Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm working with BetterHelp as the paid partner on today's video. BetterHelp connects you with credentialed therapists who are trained to help you work through whatever is on your mind. They're there to listen, to ask you questions, and help you to find the ways to move forward. One of the things that I like is the fact that they're not just there to chat. They're there to give you the tools and the techniques to help you make small, meaningful changes. And the whole idea behind BetterHelp is to make getting started with therapy a little bit easier and a bit less intimidating. I'd never actually tried therapy before because I always was under the assumption, and it was in my head, that you had to be really struggling to speak to a therapist, but that just is not the case. I actually started by messaging my therapist on the app, and then when I felt comfortable, I booked a call, and I really don't know what I was so worried about. I never really go too deep with you guys on here, but if I can help just one person by sharing my experience, then I'm more than happy to do so. One of the things that I've been working on with my therapist, and you might not believe me, but I'm actually really shy and I really struggle with communication. Me and Chad actually really struggled with this when we started our relationship, but I have just never been good at talking. A, because I don't like talking in front of people, and B, because I just have never really talked about my feelings. And when I spoke to my therapist, they said one really simple thing, which is there are no perfect words, just speak. And I know that might sound really simple to some people, but when you speak to someone who understands what you're saying, it just opens up your brain in another way. And I honestly could not recommend using BetterHelp more. What's also great is that if you feel like you haven't clicked with the therapist you're matched with, you can switch at no extra cost at any point in time, which really takes the pressure off. And I want to make sure that I'm getting this part right, but to understand what still prevents people from seeking mental health support, BetterHelp launched its first ever State of the Stigma survey, an initiative that asked over 16,000 people about their views on therapy and mental health, exploring how stigma continues to shape our views on therapy, especially among younger generations. So even though we're in a time where mental health is talked about more than ever, according to the survey, 37% of Gen Z still believe that people who go to therapy are mentally weak, and 62% of adults still believe that society discourages people from seeking help. I just find those stats incredible. I was definitely one of those people that thought you could only go to therapy if you were struggling, and if you weren't mentally well, I'm going to be honest, but it just could not be further from the truth. I would say that most people know that therapy is a positive thing and a good thing for you, but I would question how many of those people have actually done therapy themselves. So I think there is still a lot of work to be done around the stigma of therapy, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, it takes far more strength to say I could use a bit of support. I know it can feel like a big step, but sometimes the smallest changes can make the biggest difference. But if you think it's something you might find helpful, then you can head to betterhelp.com/ashmazzina and you'll get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So as I mentioned, this room is one of the most recent transformations in the entire house. I actually worked with Little Green on this room. The paint colour is Invisible Green by Little Green. It's a really lovely muted Georgian green. It's a really dark heritage green colour. I wanted this room to be masculine, to be quite charming, again to still feel in keeping with the rest of the house, but I really just love the play on colour in this room. We decided to colour drench this room as well. The walls, skirting, trim, everything is painted in Invisible Green, and it just really creates an atmospheric room. We have the dark wood colours also playing into the mix. Either side of the bed, we have some traditional French antique style bedside tables. We have some books inside there as styling pieces. I actually found the 2 bedside lamps from Ochre. They're a really beautiful iron lamp that have a really lovely hand-painted detail on them. They actually look as though they've been made out of leather, but it's actually just paint. I think they're really interesting and quite classical looking. They do look slightly oriental, but I think it really works within the space. There are so many things I can talk about in this room. I'd say the things we still have to do are to find coving. I'm really particular on cornice, and I haven't found a really lovely cornice to go in this room. I'd like something that sort of matches the ceiling rose that we put in. It's very sort of floral, it's got lots of acanthus leaves, it's got some fruits, and I really think something like that on the ceiling would look really lovely. I haven't really touched on the windows as well, but we had to replace all of our windows. We originally chose a plastic style sash window, but then we decided to get traditional wooden sash windows from a company called Beechall, and I just have to shout them out because they are the most incredible company. And if you're looking to get either a wooden window or a wooden door, then all of our doors and our windows are from Beechall, and I could not recommend them more highly. They're a really lovely team based in London, and they just do the most incredible handcrafted work. So definitely check them out. I will leave them linked below. This room is south facing. It gets all of the lights coming through the front of the house. So I really think this dark color really does work in the space. And weirdly, it doesn't make it feel smaller. I think because everything is painted, it sort of expands and you don't really see where the walls start and finish. So it's a really, really lovely room, and I really love this color. So welcome to the hallway upstairs. This room used to look very different, believe it or not, but it's still one of the least decorated spaces in our house. And this is just the reality of living in a renovation and sharing things online, I guess. You only really ever get to see the good parts. But this room is quite boring at the moment. It did used to look very different. We used to have a really ugly banister and really ugly spindles, which we've replaced with the same style that we have downstairs. It really adds that Victorian charm back into the space. We've then continued the paneling upstairs into this hallway. It's a really lovely continuation from when you enter the home and you make your way upstairs, either going into the bathroom or one of the bedrooms. It just makes the whole flow feel a bit better. We chose a really lovely light paint color up here because there are no windows in this space. It's just the three doorways that provide the light into the different rooms. But yeah, this room will look very different. I just take my time with decorating, and when I find the right pieces, I will buy them, but I just haven't come across them yet. We're gonna have lots of antique pictures on the wall, some wall lights will be added. We're then gonna get a nice Georgian console table for this space to have a nice table lamp and some nice flower arrangements. And then I think this space will pretty much be done. But again, this is just the reality of living in a renovation. So if your house also has areas like this, then it's completely normal. I'm actually just staring at part of the wall that still needs to be painted. So there are still a lot of things that we need to do in here. But now that we're done with this space, why don't we make our way through to the bathroom? As much as I really like this room, I do think it's going to be quite controversial in me saying that this is my least favourite room in the entire house. When we were doing this room, we had to get this done within 4 weeks, and I really just rushed every single choice of this room. We added in pieces that I love, like this antique chest of drawers with a marble top that we've converted into a sink. I really love this vanity, and it was such a good decision to do this. We used to have a Victorian style pedestal that was so piddly, and it just really looked off in this room. And obviously I love the antique wall mirror and the panelling, but if I could redo this room, I definitely would. And depending on if we stay in this house, I definitely think that this room could do with a little bit of a re-renovation. So maybe this will be on the cards, I'm not too sure. But the wall colour in here is a really lovely colour from Paint and Paper Library. It's called Caddy. It's a really lovely soft brown caramel colour that looks really lovely in here. It really opens up the space. One of the design choices that I really don't like anymore, it was a good idea, but it just does not work in this room because it's so small, is I decided to separate the shower and the toilet. I'm very of the mindset that your toilet shouldn't be seen in a bathroom. So I basically created these two little sort of caves, one for the shower and one for the toilet. It does work, but it just makes this room feel a bit more confined than it should be. And then at the end, we have our clawfoot bathtub, which I really do love and I really get the use out of. But again, looking backwards and redesigning this space, I probably would have put it away from the window. And this is just a top tip for me. It's a really romantic idea of having a bathtub in front of a window, but realistically, it's not very good. You don't really want to get undressed in front of a window, and it just means that it's really hard to access the window. So as romantic as it is to look outside the window and see the garden, in my opinion, just put it against a wall. But yeah, as much as I moan about this bathroom, it is still a lovely bathroom and I'm very lucky to have it. I do really love it, but I just would make a few changes. But now we're done with the bathroom, why don't we make our way into the guest bedroom, which is the final room in the house, before we make our way into the garden. So welcome to the guest bedroom. You might be thinking that this room feels a bit crazy, and you would be right in saying that. I definitely wanted one manic room in the house, and I thought what better place to try and test it out than the guest bedroom. I wanted it to be a wild card with lots of pattern, lots of textures, lots of fabrics, and I think we've achieved a certain look with this room. I chose this really beautiful wallpaper from Farrow & Ball, and if like me you're into your restoration of homes, interiors, all that sort of stuff on YouTube, then you will recognise this wallpaper from a fellow YouTube channel called Chateau de Pernon. It's a really beautiful chateau that's being restored in France, and this wallpaper is actually one of theirs. It was discovered in the linen press when they were renovating the house, and Farrow & Ball and Chateau de Pernon reimagined it and brought it back to life. I love the fact that we have a bit of history in our house. It has nothing to do with London and the UK. I love that this wallpaper sort of means something to someone, and the fact that we're using it in our home is really lovely. It's a really beautiful geometric shape in a really light blue, pale powder blue colour. And I really love it. It's very busy and it really does fill the space of this room. Again, common trend with the whole house, but this room has never really been decorated. We've repurposed some art frames that I had lying around the house, and then we popped in some Pookie lampshades. These lampshades are really good if you haven't wired in electrics. You may have noticed around the whole of the house that we have a lot of these lights. They're basically rechargeable light bulbs that you pop a shade on and you can control by remote. So they're really good if you haven't wired in electrics like we didn't plan to, and you want to add some lighting in. So I couldn't recommend them more. I will leave them linked down below. But yeah, I do really like this room. Guests are very surprised when they walk through the door, but it is a really cozy and really inviting room, so I really do love it. The one thing I am going to change is the ceiling colour. I don't know if I mentioned, but it is pink, and I don't know what I was thinking when I decided to paint it pink. I thought it would go with the blue and a dark red colour, but it just does not work. That's a little design mistake from me. But other than that, this room I really quite like. It's very cozy, it's really appropriate for a guest bedroom. When guests come to stay, it's quite an experience for them to stay in a lovely wallpapered room that has a bit of history linking it to a French chateau. So I think that's a really lovely story. But I think that's enough of this room. We've only got one more space to do in the house, and that's the garden. The garden is one of my passion projects, and I think you guys will love it. I certainly do. So let's make our way downstairs and back out into the garden. So finally, welcome to the garden. This garden is one of my favourite spaces in the entire house. Try and count how many times I've said that during this video. And this garden for me is a mixture of the two types of gardens that I love. I love Italian gardens and the formality you get from an Italian garden, but then I also love classic English country gardens. I love cottage gardens, and this garden is really a blend of the two. We have different types of structure in this garden. So we have the hard landscaping, which is the limestone cobbles on the floor. These are actually in a tumbled grey finish, and they're from a company called Cornstone. They're a really beautiful tile. I wanted something on the cooler tone to sort of reimagine a London cobblestone. I didn't want anything warm like a terracotta because I felt like it wouldn't be in keeping with the type of property that we own and the property that we live in. And then we have the other types of hard landscaping, I guess you can call it, such as the bay trees and the urn with the lavender in the middle. I really love the idea of creating a sense of intrigue in a garden and having to look around objects to see past things. It sort of makes the garden an unexplored area. If it was all just sort of flat and you could see everything all at once, it would sort of ruin the surprise. But I think we sort of took a secret garden approach. Obviously it's not a secret garden, but I just like the idea that you have to sort of peer around and work your way through the garden. On either side, we have a symmetrical type of planting. So we've decided to line the edges of the path with Hidcote lavender. You get the sensory experience of brushing past it. You smell the lavender as you walk past. Flanking the bay trees on the floor, we have some erigeron. I really love these daisies. They're really good for ground cover and just adding a light, airy, cloud-like finish to the garden. They turn pink once they've flowered, but they're a mixture of pink and whites. Bees love them. It's a common thing in our garden to help the bees and the butterflies. This is very much a pollinator-friendly garden. But we have roses, we have Salvia caridonna, we have foxgloves and wisteria. Honestly, everything you can imagine in an English country garden, we pretty much have. Now let me take you to the back of the garden where we've put our seating area. We haven't been into the garden in a few days because the weather has not been very nice, so please do excuse the leaves and the mess everywhere. But as you can see from the back, this is where our seating area is. Our garden is actually north facing, so this part of the garden gets the most amount of sun, hence why we've decided to put the seating area at the back. We can really sit here all day long, enjoy the sun with some nice drinks, some nice food. We prioritised seating over a dining area purely because our garden isn't the biggest garden, and we thought that we'd use this seating area more so than a dining area. If I talk about the planting at the back, we've decided to pot some roses at the back with some rosemary. At the moment we have a tree rose, and these are all in pots. Behind those we have some hydrangea annabelles. These are actually the incredible type. They have stronger stems to support the flowers. These flowers are absolutely huge. In the summertime, they're probably about this big per stem of flower. They're really lovely cloud-like white big flowers. Not very pollinator friendly, but they are really beautiful. And I feel like the rest of the garden is quite good for pollinators, so we can sacrifice these few plants for us. Above them, we have some holly trees. We planted these holly trees about 3 years ago, and they did not like being planted in our garden. They've really suffered. They've dropped a lot of leaves, but they are slowly recovering. And we also wanted them to sort of block out the rest of the view because we do live in London, and London, if you've never lived in London before, is a very overlooked place, and you rarely, if ever, get a private garden. So we're popping these trees in, trying to create a sense of privacy, and eventually they will grow in, but it does take a bit of time, especially with plants. I could talk about the garden forever, but I think that's pretty much covered most of it. If you have any questions, or if you want me to go into more detail about the plants, then I definitely can. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the garden. Again, it's one of my favourite spaces, and it's just a total place of relaxation. And it's definitely somewhere when the weather improves that I will be spending all of my time pretty much every single day. So I think that now concludes the house tour. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys think. It's taken 4 years to get here, and we still have a lot more work to do, but I would love for you to follow along on the journey. So if you haven't yet, please do hit that subscribe button, and we have lots of more exciting projects coming along very soon, so I can't wait to share them with you. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much for watching. I shall see you very soon for another video.